So, well, the top of the camera was going to have to come off anyway sooner or later, so it's just going to be sooner. Off with the rewind knob. Single screw at the end of the top plate. 2 screws at the rewind knob end. Top cover comes off neatly. No sign of the missing rear lens for the finder. It's not anywhere. I'll lift out the shutter release shaft. Here's our selenium cell. This is the most delicate part here, is our meter. That needle there. You can probably see if I hold that correctly. You can probably see, let's get that centered up. As I allow light on or off the selenium cell, you can see the meter needle swinging. So the meter is certainly active. It's unlikely to be anything like accurate, but at least it works. I don't want to disturb any of this, but I've got to get the film advance apart here, so right, get the correct screwdriver. And take the screws out of that bracket. I'll take the screws out of the bracket at the other end of the top cover. With a bit of luck I can lift that chrome trim off without too much disturbance. Get it out from under that cell. Yes. Remove that screw from the top of the film advance. Lift that off. That should slide out of the body with a bit of luck. It does. Get the film advance components off here. Just run out of recording space on the card there, so we have to swap another card in place. Those screws were very reluctant to come loose. Not sure why particularly. The rewind button I want off next. I'm going to take out the sprocket shaft. That's pretty reluctant. Normally you just break them free and they unscrew easily after that. This one's not moving. Okay. Corrosion's done that. That might not come out in one piece. Okay, see what I can do. So you have a plastic sprocket on the Retinettes. It's certainly solid enough in most cases. No, it is just rotating. I can't hold that firmly enough. Let's see if I can wedge something in there. The likelihood of this breaking are pretty high. I'll almost certainly end up replacing the sprocket, I think. Let's see if I can jam. Will that do it? Yeah, we're away. The sprocket out, lift the bush off the top of the film advance, lift out the clutch mechanism, at the base of the camera, unhook that spring. This is the lever that locks the rewind button in place. Oh, that's not good. I don't know if that's corrosion doing that, or whether somebody used Loctite or something on it, but that screw is not in a hurry to come out. I'm getting about an 1/8 of a turn. Right, let's just get this out first. Take that out. Take out the undo this screw. I can remove the film release lever. And at the base of the camera, let's have another look at that screw. I want another screwdriver. Oh, I was afraid of that. It's just sheared off. Okay. I don't know why that sheared off. Somebody may have Loctited it in place. That is a major nuisance. It now means I've got to drill through that screw and get the remains of it out. There's no obvious sign of corrosion there. I don't know what's caused that. It's always vaguely possible that when the camera was assembled or when the camera was repaired, that somebody cross-threaded the screw when they were driving it back, putting it back in. But that was just weird. I mean, I could get a part of a turn, but it wouldn't come any further. Right. Well, I'll clean up the body and then drill that piece out. The problem with the film advance was causing the reluctance to return to the parked position is just that everything here is very gummed up with dried grease. That all needs to be cleaned. I'm going to go and put those pieces in the degreaser right now. So while those parts are cleaning in the ultrasonic cleaner, I'm attempting to drill out the remains of that screw. Fortunately, it's quite long. And hopefully, if I run a tap through the hole to clean it up, clean the threads up, I can replace that screw and all will be good. The drill bit I'm using is a carbide bit. They're very, very sharp. Unfortunately, they're also very, very brittle. I'd say I would break them about 1 time in 3 when I use them. I'll bring you back when I'm through. Well, that's probably an hour of my life I'm not getting back. I managed to drill out and clear that hole on the base of the camera. I've run a tap through it. I don't think the thread is particularly stunning, but it'll do. Why the screw should have been bound up in there so much, I have no idea. There's nothing obvious there. It's vaguely possible someone had cross-threaded it when they ran the screw in. I just don't know. I'll just fit this spring here to the film release lever. Just give the body a wipe with molybdenum paste where the release lever runs there and there, and where the spring on the release lever runs along there. I'll put the release lever in place. Check that's sitting correctly, appears to be good. There's the spring for it. Here's my return spring. And there's the screw from the top. Just run that down. That should be good. Now the film sprocket, that might need a bit of a wipe. The take-up spool, I should say. Yeah, a bit of old grease in there. You can see the back of that. And the bush likewise, that should have gone through the cleanup, but it's a simple piece, I can clean it now. Goes into the body there. Here's the film advance shaft. I'm just looking at the state of this to make sure that the cam on the base of it's not loose or anything. That all appears good. Quite happy with the state of that. This was quite stiff with dried out grease previously, so it's good to get that out and cleaned up. I'll rub a bit of grease into that spring there too. This is graphite grease I'm using here. It's this particular graphite grease is has a nice feel in that application. It sticks to the surface as well. And some synthetic grease I'll run around these surfaces that the cam on the bottom of the release lever runs on. And there's virtually none on this face. Check that the spring's seated. This was a little bit lackluster in performance, so I might move that round a third of a turn from where I normally would, just to pre-tension that spring, which means moving it to there. I should have the 3 screws handy. Pay close attention to make sure I use the nickel plated screws and don't pick up the chrome plated screws from the top cover by mistake. Now this is a little bit, the sun's just coming in beside me here. I'm just going to pull that line across. Yeah, the contrast was getting a bit much there. Well, that screw's not going in straight. Let's just straighten that up. That's better. I'll move this back to the start position. Yeah, feels pretty good there. It's a mistake to get over enthusiastic when you're pre-tensioning the film advance on one of these cameras, because what you're doing is you end up with the spring wound tighter, and if you overdo it, it winds up so tight that the coils effectively bind up on the spring, and it doesn't get more enthusiastic about returning the film advance to the park position. It just tends to stick. Jam instead. It feels good. At the top of the camera, I'm paranoid about that meter needle. They're just so easily damaged with all this pulling things apart, putting them back together. Now the clutch assembly, that actually was in quite good order. Sometimes they're a bit stiff as the grease has dried out or a bit of grit has got in there, but that was actually in quite good order. But I'll lubricate it anyway. And again I'm using graphite grease. And getting this together is always entertaining. I've got a pair of crimp lug pliers that I can use to hold that spring in place. Rotate this in my fingers to draw that spring up tight. Put the outside on. There's my clutch assembly all assembled. And it's always smoother in action in one direction than the other. But that's the direction it needs to move in, so that's all good. Right, so that's back in the camera body, and the bush that guides it, that I can lubricate with a bit of synthetic grease. And really what I want to do is just squeeze some in there, because this has been through the cleaner and there's no grease in it at all. Just to squeeze some into that space, so that it's not dry. We have a plain screw over here. A retina camera, there would be a support post there for the rack. But of course there's no rack here. You can see they use the same basic casting for the Retinettes because it's got a cutout there in the shape of a cocking rack. It's even got a slot over here in the shape of the cocking rack. Of course it's not used. So they started with the same basic casting and they just machined them differently for the retinas and the Retinettes. Let's get that little ratchet pawl in place. And the post that holds it all in place, I'll put a touch of synthetic grease on the top of that, where that ratchet pawl will run. Run that down, make sure that the screw goes through the pawl and isn't binding anything. That's all good. Do those two screws up tight. Let's put a little bit of synthetic grease under the gear that runs on the top there. I might put that spring in place first, the return spring on that ratchet ball, which I have put down where? It was here a second ago. There it is. And it's best to get away. Rotate that gear into position. That's just in there nicely. I'll just check the position of the shaft at the bottom of the camera. Yeah, that's sitting in the neutral position. That's good. I'll just pop that bush from the tripod socket underneath there to support that film advance while I'm putting the other components on it. It's easier than fighting with it when things are wanting to push away. Now the little leaf spring here, I'll put that on. I'll always put a smear of grease on that because it's high carbon steel. You're a bit prone to rusting otherwise, and you just don't need it. And where's the other piece of that? I'm missing something here. Okay, wait, I'm back when I find it.